White captive. A motherless Comanche baby who hasn't stopped crying for 3 days. A camp on the brink of despair. And then, one song changes everything. What power lies in a lullaby, and what happens when it reaches not only a child's ears but a warrior's heart? Thank you so much for watching and for all your comments. Let me know at the end if you liked the story, and where you're watching from and why you're following this. The Texas plains stretched endlessly under the blazing summer sun of 1867, a vast expanse of golden grass that rippled like ocean waves in the relentless wind. The Comanche camp stood resilient against the harsh landscape, a collection of buffalo hide teepees arranged in careful circles near the banks of the Brazos River. Smoke from cooking fires drifted lazily into the cloudless sky, carrying with it the scent of roasted meat and wild sage. Sarah Mitchell had been with the Comanche for 3 weeks now, though it felt like an eternity. The 24-year-old woman sat outside the teepee she had been assigned to, her auburn hair tangled and her pale skin burned from the unforgiving sun. Her once fine cotton dress, the blue one she had worn the day the war party attacked her family's wagon train, was now torn and stained with dust and sweat. She kept her green eyes downcast, avoiding the curious and sometimes hostile stares of the tribe members who passed by. She had been traveling with her younger brother Thomas and their elderly aunt when the raiders struck. The memory of that day haunted her every waking moment. The screaming, the chaos, the blood. Thomas had been killed immediately, an arrow through his chest before he could even reach for his rifle. Aunt Margaret had died trying to shield Sarah, taking a blow meant for her niece. Sarah had been spared, though she did not know why. Perhaps they saw value in keeping her alive, or perhaps it was simply cruel fate. The woman who had claimed her as a captive was named Mina, a stern-faced warrior's widow, who had lost her husband in a skirmish with soldiers 2 months prior. Mina treated Sarah with cold indifference, neither cruel nor kind, simply expecting obedience. Sarah worked from dawn until dusk, gathering firewood, hauling water from the river, scraping hides, and performing whatever tasks Mina demanded of her. Her hands, once soft and accustomed to needlework and piano playing back in her home in Missouri, were now rough and blistered. But today was different. Today, something had shifted in the camp's atmosphere. Sarah noticed it immediately when she woke before dawn. There was tension in the air, a heaviness that seemed to press down on everyone. Warriors gathered in small groups, speaking in low, urgent tones. Women whispered to one another as they worked, casting worried glances toward the largest teepee at the center of the camp. Mina had been particularly distracted all morning, barely acknowledging Sarah's presence. Finally, as the sun climbed higher and the heat became oppressive, an older woman named Ayanna approached. Her weathered face was creased with concern, and she spoke rapidly to Mina in their language. Sarah had picked up a few words during her captivity, but not enough to understand the full conversation. However, she caught one word that made her heart skip: Mankato. Sarah had learned that Mankato was the name of the chief's son, a baby no more than 6 months old. She had seen the child from a distance, always held carefully by various women of the tribe, always the center of attention and affection. But she had never been close enough to truly see him or understand the circumstances of his birth. Mina suddenly turned to Sarah, her dark eyes sharp and assessing. She spoke in broken English, which she rarely did. "You come. Chief needs help. Baby cry, not stop. 3 days now. Nothing works." Sarah's heart pounded as she stood, brushing the dust from her tattered skirt. "The baby is sick?" "Not sick," Mina replied, her jaw tight with frustration. "Just cry. Loud. Always loud. Mother dead. Birth killed her. Chief very sad. Baby very sad. Medicine woman tries everything. Nothing stops crying." Sarah felt a pang of sympathy pierce through her own misery. A motherless child crying for comfort that no one could seem to provide. She knew that pain in a different way. She too had lost everyone she loved in this harsh, unforgiving land. Mina led her through the camp, and Sarah became acutely aware of the eyes following her every step. Some gazes were curious, others openly hostile. She kept her head down, her hands clasped together to stop them from trembling. They approached the large teepee, and Mina gestured for her to wait outside while she entered. The sound of the baby's wailing reached Sarah even through the thick buffalo hide walls. It was a desperate, heartbroken sound that seemed to tear at something deep inside her chest. She had helped care for neighbors' children back home, had always loved babies and dreamed of having her own family someday. That dream felt impossibly distant now, a fragment of a life that no longer existed. Mina emerged and beckoned her inside with a sharp gesture. Sarah ducked through the opening and found herself in the dim interior of the chief's lodge. It took her eyes a moment to adjust to the low light. The space was larger than any other teepee she had seen, decorated with painted hides depicting hunting scenes and battles. Weapons hung on the walls alongside medicine bundles and eagle feathers. In the center, a small fire burned, its smoke drifting up through the opening at the top. And there, seated on a pile of furs, was Chief Chayton. Sarah had seen him before, but always from a distance. Now, in the close confines of the teepee, she was struck by his presence. He appeared to be in his late 20s with strong, chiseled features and long black hair that fell past his shoulders. His bare chest bore the scars of battle, and his dark eyes held a depth of sorrow that Sarah recognized all too well. He wore deerskin leggings and moccasins, and a necklace of bear claws rested against his collarbone. His face was haggard, exhausted, the face of a man who had not slept in days. In his arms he held the baby, rocking him gently, but with visible desperation. The child's face was red and contorted with distress, his tiny fists waving in the air as he screamed. Chief Chayton looked up as Sarah entered, and their eyes met for a brief, electric moment before she quickly looked away. An elderly woman, whom Sarah assumed was the medicine woman, sat nearby. Her face was lined with age and wisdom, and she shook her head slowly, speaking to Chayton in their language. Her tone was apologetic, defeated. Mina spoke to the chief, gesturing toward Sarah. The words were rapid and incomprehensible to Sarah, but she caught her own presence being explained, offered perhaps as a last resort. Chief Chayton studied her for a long moment, his gaze penetrating and assessing. Then he spoke, his voice deep and rough from exhaustion. "You know babies?" he asked in surprisingly clear English. Sarah was startled to hear him speak her language. She nodded slowly. "Yes, I have cared for children before. Back home I often helped with my neighbors' little ones. My son cries," Chayton said, his voice cracking slightly with emotion. 3 days, 3 nights. Nothing stops him. Not milk, not warmth, not rocking. Medicine woman says he is healthy, but he will not be comforted. His mother," he paused, closing his eyes briefly as pain flashed across his features. "His mother died bringing him into this world. Perhaps he feels her absence. Perhaps he mourns what he never knew." Sarah's heart ached at the raw grief in his words. She took a tentative step closer, her fear momentarily forgotten in the face of this father's anguish. "May I?" she asked softly, holding out her arms. Chayton hesitated, then slowly stood and approached her. He was tall, powerfully built, towering over her smaller frame. Up close, she could see the exhaustion etched into every line of his face, the desperate hope flickering in his eyes. Carefully, he transferred the screaming baby into her arms. The child was so small, so fragile, his skin warm against her arms. Sarah instinctively held him close to her chest, supporting his head with one hand while gently rocking him. The baby's cries did not diminish, and she felt panic beginning to rise. What if she failed? What would happen to her then? But then, without thinking, Sarah began to hum. It was a melody her own mother had sung to her when she was small, a gentle lullaby that had comforted her through childhood nightmares and illness. The tune was soft and sweet, rising and falling like a gentle stream over smooth stones. The effect was not immediate, but slowly, gradually, the baby's screams began to quiet. His cries became whimpers, then soft hiccuping sounds. Sarah continued to hum, swaying gently back and forth, and then she began to sing the words in a voice barely above a whisper. "Hush now, my darling, the stars shine above. Sleep now, my precious, wrapped safe in my love. The moon watches over, the wind sings your name. Tomorrow brings sunshine, but tonight peace shall reign." The teepee fell completely silent except for Sarah's voice. The baby's dark eyes, so much like his father's, began to flutter closed. His tiny body relaxed against her, his breathing evening out into the soft rhythm of sleep. Sarah continued to sing, afraid to stop, afraid to break whatever spell had been cast. When she finally let the last note fade away, She looked up to find everyone staring at her in amazement. Chief Chaitin's expression was unreadable, a mixture of shock, relief, and something else she could not quite identify. The medicine woman was nodding slowly, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "He sleeps," Chaitin whispered, as if speaking too loudly might shatter this precious moment. He moved closer to Sarah, looking down at his son's peaceful face with such love and wonder that Sarah felt tears prick at her own eyes. 3 days he has cried without ceasing, and you silence him with a song. Sarah remained perfectly still, afraid that even the slightest movement might wake the sleeping child in her arms. Little Mankato's chest rose and fell with gentle breaths, his tiny fingers curled against her worn dress. The silence in the teepee felt sacred after days of relentless crying, and everyone seemed to hold their breath in reverence of this miraculous peace. Chief Chaitin carefully took his son from Sarah's arms, his calloused fingers brushing against hers for the briefest moment. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through her, and she quickly pulled her hands back, clasping them together nervously. Chaitin laid Mankato down on a soft pile of furs, covering him with a delicate rabbit-skin blanket. For several long moments he simply watched his son sleep, his expression transforming from the haggard desperation she had seen earlier to something softer, more vulnerable. The medicine woman, whose name Sarah would later learn was Winona, approached and placed a weathered hand on Sarah's shoulder. She spoke in Comanche, her tone warm and approving, then nodded respectfully before leaving the teepee. Mina followed, but not before giving Sarah a sharp look that seemed to say, this changed nothing about her status as a captive. Alone now with the chief and his sleeping son, Sarah felt acutely uncomfortable. She stood awkwardly, unsure whether she should leave or wait to be dismissed. Chaitin turned to face her, and in the firelight she could see his features more clearly. Despite the exhaustion, despite the grief that shadowed his eyes, he was remarkably handsome. Strong jaw, high cheekbones, and eyes that held an intelligence and depth that surprised her. She had been taught to fear the Comanche, to see them as savages, but this man before her seemed anything but savage. He seemed human, vulnerable, a father desperate to comfort his motherless child. "What is your name?" Chaitin asked, his voice low so as not to wake Mankato. "Sarah," she replied quietly. "Sarah Mitchell." "Sarah," he repeated, as if testing the sound of it. "I am Chaitin. It means falcon in your language." He paused, studying her with those penetrating dark eyes. "You were taken from the wagon train 3 weeks past." It was not a question, but Sarah nodded anyway. "Yes, they killed my brother and my aunt. I am all that remains of my family." Something flickered in Chaitin's expression, perhaps recognition of shared grief. "My wife, Kimimela, died 6 moons ago bringing Mankato into this world. She was strong, brave, everything a chief's wife should be. But the birth was difficult, and she bled until the medicine woman could not save her." His voice was steady, but Sarah could hear the pain beneath each word. "I have led my people through battles, through hunger, through the encroachment of the white settlers onto our lands, but I could not save her. I could not protect the mother of my child." Sarah felt tears well in her eyes, both for his loss and for her own. "I am sorry," she whispered. "No one should have to endure such pain." "Yet we both have," Chaitin observed. He moved to sit near the fire, gesturing for her to sit as well. After a moment's hesitation, Sarah lowered herself onto a buffalo hide across from him. "My son has cried since the day he learned to draw breath. Winona says there is nothing wrong with his body, that he is healthy and strong, but I believe he feels the absence of his mother, feels the emptiness where her heartbeat should be. Nothing we have tried has brought him peace, until you sang to him. My mother used to sing that song to me," Sarah said softly, staring into the flames. "She died when I was 12 of fever. I remember lying in bed, frightened and alone, and she would sing to me until I fell asleep. Even when she was too weak to speak, she would hum the melody." She wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand. "I have not sung it since she passed. I did not even realize I remembered all the words until they came out just now." Chaitin watched her carefully, and Sarah felt exposed under his gaze, as if he could see directly into her wounded soul. "You have known great loss," he said, Perhaps that is why Mankato responds to you. He recognizes a kindred spirit, one who understands the ache of absence. They sat in silence for a while, the crackling of the fire the only sound besides Mankato's soft breathing. Sarah felt strange sitting here like this, almost as if they were equals rather than captor and captive. It was disorienting, confusing, but not entirely unpleasant. "Will you sing for him again?" Chayton asked suddenly. "When he wakes and cries, will you come and bring him peace with your song?" Sarah looked up, meeting his eyes. "You want me to care for him?" "I want my son to know comfort," Chayton replied firmly. "If your voice brings him that comfort, then yes, I want you to care for him. You will stay here, in this teepee, where you can attend to him when he needs you. Mina will be told that you now serve a different purpose." Sarah's mind reeled. To be moved from Mina's harsh supervision to the chief's own lodge was unprecedented. She knew it would cause talk, speculation, perhaps even resentment among the tribe. But as she looked at the peacefully sleeping baby, at his tiny, perfect features and the way his little chest rose and fell, she found she could not refuse. "I will care for him," she said quietly. "As long as he needs me, I will sing for him." Chayton nodded, and for the first time since she had entered the teepee, she saw something like relief cross his features. "You will be treated well here. You will have food, water, proper clothing. In return, you will help me keep my son content and healthy." Over the following days, Sarah's life transformed completely. She was given a beautiful deerskin dress to replace her tattered cotton one, soft moccasins for her feet, and a sleeping place within Chayton's teepee. The arrangement was proper. A partition of hides separated her area from where Chayton and Mankato slept, preserving modesty and propriety. But she was acutely aware of his presence, of the sound of his breathing at night, of his movements in the early morning hours before the camp awoke. True to Chayton's word, Mankato would wake crying, and Sarah would lift him into her arms and sing. Sometimes it was the lullaby her mother had taught her. Sometimes other songs she remembered from her childhood. The baby responded to all of them, calming in her arms, his dark eyes studying her face as if memorizing every feature. During the day, when Mankato was content, Sarah would walk with him through the camp, pointing out birds and clouds, talking to him in soft tones about everything and nothing. The tribe's initial suspicion of her began to slowly shift. Women would smile at her as she passed with the baby, and some even approached to admire Mankato, speaking to her in broken English or through gestures. Children were less afraid of her now, occasionally running up to peek at the baby before darting away with giggles. She was still a captive, still an outsider, but the hostility had diminished considerably. Chayton spent much of his time with his warriors, hunting and patrolling the territory, but in the evenings, he would return to the teepee and sit with his son. Sarah would watch as this powerful chief transformed into a gentle father, holding Mankato with such tenderness that it made her heart ache. Sometimes Chayton would tell her stories about the Comanche way of life, about the sacred bond between his people and the land, about the traditions that had been passed down through generations. "We are not the savages your people believe us to be," he said one evening as they sat together watching Mankato play with a rattle made of buffalo horn. "We love our children, honor our elders, protect our families. We fight to preserve our way of life because it is being taken from us piece by piece. The white settlers come with their promises and their treaties, and then they break those promises and take more land. We are pushed further and further from the places our ancestors are buried, from the hunting grounds that have sustained us for countless generations." Sarah listened, her perspective shifting with each word. She had grown up hearing tales of savage Indians who attacked without provocation, who were obstacles to progress and civilization. But here, living among them, she saw families who laughed and loved, who cared for their sick and honored their dead. She saw a people fighting for survival, not mindless violence. "I understand now," she said softly. "I understand that there are no true villains in this story, only people trying to protect what they love." Chayton looked at her with surprise and something that might have been respect. "You are wiser than most, Sarah Mitchell." As the weeks passed, Sarah found herself thinking less about escape and more about the life she was building here, strange as it was. She had purpose caring for Mankato, and she had developed a deep affection for the sweet-natured baby. But more confusing were the feelings beginning to stir whenever Chayton was near. The way her heart would beat faster when their hands accidentally touched as they both reached for Mankato. The way she found herself watching him when she thought he was not looking, admiring the strength in his movements, the tenderness in his eyes when he gazed at his son. She told herself it was merely gratitude, or perhaps some strange effect of her circumstances. But deep down, she knew it was something more, something dangerous and complicated. One afternoon, as storm clouds gathered on the horizon, Chayton returned early from a hunting expedition. His expression was grave, troubled. He found Sarah sitting outside the teepee with Mankato, singing softly while the baby dozed against her shoulder. "We must talk," Chayton said, his voice tight with tension. Inside, Sarah's stomach clenched with worry as she followed him into the teepee, carefully laying the sleeping Mankato on his furs. Chayton paced like a caged animal, his jaw clenched, his hands balled into fists. "What has happened?" Sarah asked, fear creeping into her voice. "Soldiers," Chayton said, the word coming out like a curse. "A regiment is camped 2 days' ride from here. They are hunting for Comanche camps, seeking to force us onto reservations or destroy us entirely. My scouts report they have been questioning travelers, asking about a white woman taken captive weeks ago. They are looking for you, Sarah." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She should feel relief, hope at the possibility of rescue. But instead she felt only a confusing tangle of emotions. "What will you do?" Chayton stopped pacing and turned to face her, his eyes burning with intensity. "What do you want me to do? If I return you to them, you will be safe. Return to your people. But the soldiers will use your rescue as justification to attack this camp. They will say they are liberating captives, but they will kill our women and children, burn our homes, scatter our people. If you stay, you remain a prisoner, but my tribe remains safe." The weight of the decision pressed down on Sarah like a physical thing. She looked at Mankato, sleeping so peacefully, unaware of the danger surrounding him. She thought of the women who had begun to accept her, the children who now smiled at her, the life that had begun to feel less like captivity and more like something else entirely. "I do not feel like a prisoner anymore," she said quietly, surprised by the truth of her own words. Chayton stared at Sarah as if seeing her for the first time, his dark eyes searching her face for any sign of deception or fear. The air between them felt charged, electric with unspoken emotions and dangerous possibilities. Outside, the wind picked up, howling across the plains like a warning of the storm approaching in more ways than one. "You do not wish to return to your people?" Chayton asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "You would choose to stay here knowing what it means?" Sarah's heart pounded so hard she could hear the blood rushing in her ears. She looked down at Mankato, then back at Chayton, and in that moment she realized the truth she had been avoiding for weeks. She had fallen in love with this child who was not hers, and with the man standing before her, whose grief and strength mirrored her own. It was impossible. It was forbidden by every rule of the society she had come from, but it was undeniably real. "I have nothing to return to," Sarah said, her voice gaining strength. "My family is gone. My home burned by the very people who now search for me. But here I have purpose. Mankato needs me. And I—" She faltered, unable to finish the thought aloud. Chayton crossed the distance between them in 2 long strides. He stood so close she could feel the heat radiating from his body, could see the rapid rise and fall of his chest. "And what, Sarah? Speak the truth that I see in your eyes." "I need him too," Sarah whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I need you both. When I hold Mankato, when I sing to him, I feel like I have found a piece of myself that I thought died with my family. And when you speak to me, when you share your stories and your pain, I feel less alone in this world. I know it is wrong. I know it goes against everything I was taught, but I cannot deny what my heart tells me." For a long moment, Chayton said nothing. Then, with a gentleness that belied his warrior's strength, he reached up and wiped the tears from her face with his thumb. "There is no wrong in finding light in darkness, Sarah. My people believe that the spirits guide us to where we need to be, even through paths of suffering. Perhaps you were brought here not as punishment, but as salvation for both of us. My son was dying slowly from the absence of a mother's love. I was dying slowly from the weight of grief I carried alone. You have saved us both." "But the soldiers," Sarah said, her voice breaking. "If I stay, if they find out, they will attack. I cannot be the reason innocent people die." Chaitan's jaw tightened with determination. "Then we must ensure they do not find out. Tomorrow, I will send word through a trusted scout that the white woman died of fever 2 weeks ago. The scout will guide them to a false grave far from here. They will mourn you perhaps, but they will have no reason to attack this camp, and you will be free to choose your own path, to stay or go as your heart decides." "I choose to stay," Sarah said without hesitation. "If you will have me, if your people will accept me, I choose this life over the one I lost." Something in Chaitan's expression shifted, softened, and transformed into something that made Sarah's breath catch. He cupped her face in both his hands, his calloused palms rough against her skin but infinitely gentle. "I have watched you with my son, seen the love you give him so freely. I have listened to your voice bringing peace where there was only pain, and I have felt my own heart, frozen with grief for so long, begin to thaw in your presence. Sarah Mitchell, you came to us as a captive, but I ask you now to stay as something more. Stay as the mother Mankato needs. Stay as the partner I need. Stay as my wife if you will have a Comanche chief whose heart has been broken but is learning to heal." Sarah's tears flowed freely now, but they were tears of joy mixed with the sorrow of all they had both endured. "Yes," she breathed. "Yes, Chaitan, I will stay. I will be Mankato's mother and your wife if you will teach me how to be part of your world." Chaitan pulled her into his arms, holding her as if she were something precious and fragile. Sarah wrapped her arms around him, feeling the solid strength of his body against hers, the steady beat of his heart beneath her cheek. They stood like that for a long moment, two broken souls finding wholeness in each other's embrace. Mankato chose that moment to wake with a small whimper, and they both turned to him, laughing softly through their tears. Sarah picked up the baby, and Chaitan wrapped his arms around them both, creating a circle of family where before there had been only fragments and loss. The following days moved swiftly as Chaitan put his plan into motion. The trusted scout, a young warrior named Kohana, rode out to intercept the soldiers. He brought with him a carefully crafted story and led them to a hastily prepared grave marker far to the east. The soldiers, after investigating and finding what appeared to be evidence of Sarah's death, offered prayers and moved on. Their mission concluded. The immediate threat had passed. But Sarah's integration into the tribe required more than just the absence of soldiers. Chaitan called a council of the elders and respected warriors, presenting Sarah before them, and explaining his intentions. The reaction was mixed. Some saw wisdom in the chief taking a new wife to care for his motherless son. Others worried about the precedent of bringing a white woman so fully into their community, especially during such dangerous times. It was old Winona, the medicine woman, who finally spoke in Sarah's favor. She addressed the council in Comanche, and though Sarah could not understand all the words, she caught enough to know Winona was speaking of the baby's miraculous peace, of the signs and portents she had witnessed. When Winona finished, she turned to Sarah and spoke in careful English. "The spirits brought you here for purpose. Baby needs mother. Chief needs partner. Tribe needs hope that different peoples can find peace together. You have good heart. You learn our ways. You will be one of us." The council deliberated long into the night, but eventually they gave their blessing. The marriage ceremony would take place in 3 days' time, conducted according to Comanche tradition. Sarah would be given a new name in their language, symbolizing her rebirth into the tribe. Those 3 days passed in a blur of preparation. The women of the tribe, led by a kind-faced woman named Tallulah, took Sarah under their care. They taught her how to properly prepare food according to Comanche custom, how to tan hides, how to identify medicinal plants. They dressed her in the finest deerskin wedding dress, beautifully decorated with intricate beadwork and quill work. They braided her auburn hair and wove feathers and small bells into the plaits. Sarah absorbed everything like a woman dying of thirst finally given water. She practiced the words they taught her, stumbling over the unfamiliar sounds but determined to learn. She studied their customs, their beliefs, their way of seeing the world. And with each lesson, she felt less like Sarah Mitchell from Missouri, and more like someone new, someone being born from the ashes of who she had been. On the evening before the ceremony, Sarah sat with Mankato while Chayton was away preparing for the rituals. She sang to the baby, watching his dark eyes grow heavy with sleep, and marveled at how much her life had changed in just 2 months. She had lost everything, been taken against her will, thrust into a world completely foreign to everything she had known. Yet here, in this teepee on the Texas plains, she had found something she never expected: a family, a purpose, and a love that defied all the boundaries her old world had tried to impose. The wedding ceremony took place at sunset, with the entire tribe gathered in a great circle. Sarah stood beside Chayton, her hand clasped in his, as the medicine woman performed the sacred rituals. Prayers were offered to the spirits, blessings given, and traditional songs sung. When the moment came for Sarah to receive her Comanche name, Winona placed her weathered hands on Sarah's head and spoke clearly so all could hear. "From this day forward, you are Kimama, which means butterfly. Like the butterfly, you have transformed from one form into another. You bring beauty and new life to our people. You are no longer white or outsider. You are Comanche. You are family." Tears streamed down Sarah's face as the tribe erupted in celebration. Chayton pulled her close, pressing his forehead to hers in a gesture of intimacy and connection. "Kimama," he whispered. "My Kimama, my wife, my heart." The celebration lasted long into the night, with feasting and dancing and storytelling. Sarah, now Kimama, was welcomed with open arms by people who had once viewed her with suspicion. She danced with the women, laughed with the children, and accepted the blessings of the elders. And through it all, Chayton remained by her side, his hand always finding hers, his eyes filled with a love and gratitude that needed no words. When the festivities finally wound down and they retired to their teepee, Mankato was already asleep, watched over by Tallulah. Alone together for the first time as husband and wife, Chayton and Kimama stood facing each other in the firelight. The partition that had separated their sleeping areas had been removed, symbolizing their new union. "I never thought I would love again," Chayton said softly, reaching up to gently remove the feathers from her hair. "After Kimimela died, I believed my heart had died with her. But you have shown me that the heart is more resilient than I knew, that love can grow even in the hardest soil. I never thought I would find home again," Kimama replied, using her new name naturally, as if she had always been called such. "But home is not a place. It is the people we love, the ones who see us truly and accept us completely. You and Mankato are my home now." They came together then, a kiss that was both gentle and passionate, a promise and a healing. The barriers between their worlds, between their pasts and their future, dissolved in that moment. They were simply two people who had found each other against all odds, two souls that had recognized their match. In the months that followed, Kimama flourished in her new life. She became fluent in Comanche, learned to ride horses with skill that impressed even the most experienced warriors, and earned respect as both the chief's wife and Mankato's devoted mother. The baby thrived under her care, growing strong and healthy, his laughter filling the camp with joy. Chayton led his people with renewed strength and wisdom, his burden of grief lifted by the love and partnership Kimama provided. Together, they navigated the increasingly difficult tensions with the encroaching white settlements, working to protect their people while seeking peaceful solutions where possible. Kimama served as a bridge between worlds, able to communicate with soldiers and settlers in ways that sometimes prevented conflict. 2 years after Kimama first sang Mankato to sleep, she gave birth to a daughter. The baby girl had her mother's green eyes and her father's strong features, a beautiful blend of two worlds. They named her Mika, meaning intelligent raccoon, for her clever nature was apparent even as an infant. Mankato, now a toddler, was utterly devoted to his baby sister, always wanting to help care for her, to protect her. As Kimama sat outside the teepee one warm spring evening, Mankato playing nearby while she nursed baby Mika, she reflected on the impossible journey that had brought her here. She thought of Sarah Mitchell, the frightened young woman who had been taken captive on the Texas plains. That woman seemed like a stranger now, someone from a half-remembered dream. Chayton emerged from the teepee and sat beside her, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. Mankato immediately climbed into his father's lap, and together they sat as a family, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of orange and gold. "What are you thinking, my love?" Chayton asked, pressing a kiss to her temple. "I am thinking about the song," Kamama said softly. "The lullaby my mother taught me, the one that brought me to you. She sang it to comfort me in times of fear and pain, never knowing that one day it would lead me to a new life, a new family, a new love. Perhaps she is watching from the spirit world, smiling to know that her gift to me became a gift to us all. Then we owe her a great debt," Chayton said, his voice thick with emotion. "For that song brought me back my son's joy and gave me a future I thought was lost forever." Kamama began to hum the familiar melody, and Mika's eyes fluttered closed, her tiny mouth going slack as she drifted into peaceful sleep. Mankato, recognizing the song that had been sung to him countless times, smiled and nestled closer to his father. As the stars began to emerge in the darkening sky, the family sat together in perfect contentment. The world beyond their camp was uncertain and often dangerous, but here, in this moment, there was only love and peace and the promise of tomorrow. Kamama had lost everything and found everything. She had been broken and made whole. She had crossed an impossible divide and discovered that love recognizes no boundaries when hearts are willing to be transformed. And it had all begun with a motherless child who would not stop crying until a captive white woman sang him a lullaby that changed all their lives forever.